AOA podcast back for another episode. Oh my goodness. Look at all you good looking people out there. It's good that somebody in this mix is good looking. You're all pal Ant. Looks like it's going to be a solo show, just you and I, and the three big topics of the day. The 9/11 plea deal that I cannot believe we have just witnessed. Donald Trump visited the National Association of Black Journalists earlier in Chicago. Some fireworks there. And Fox News, their ratings are soaring right now. Absolutely soaring. Plus, Robin's cat is possessed and Aussie Annie is already in the future. All that and more, my friends. That is what we like to call May Podcast. I thought we might have been getting a Frankie C Wednesday appearance here because he was in the Discord chat, already hot in the Discord chat. And I thought he might make an appearance. Who knows? Maybe he'll make an appearance later on. I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to just wait and see. But he is, as you can imagine, none too pleased with President Trump's appearance at the NABJ over in Chicago from earlier today. That is not even the top story, though. The top story just broke moments ago before we jumped on the air here, and that is the 9/11 plea deal, which I cannot believe we are discussing this. 9/11, obviously. What are we going on here? I can't even believe this. 23 years. 23 years since 9/11. Could you imagine? Remember 9/12/2001? You kind of felt like you were never going to get here. We were never going to be discussing 20 years. I mean, I remember when we had the 10-year anniversary. It all seems kind of crazy. And the amount of absurdity and craziness that we've seen since, with the pandemic and everything else. Like, do you remember the time when you thought, oh, we survived 9/11. We got through 9/11. That's going to be the craziest thing in my lifetime. And as it turns out, no. Maybe, but I would say the pandemic, because it was a global event, perhaps even a bigger deal than 9/11. Certainly for Americans, as big as the pandemic was, I'm not entirely sure if there's anything that had a bigger impact on our lives than 9/11 itself. But we start with the news that the three people behind 9/11, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, obviously the big one, the planner, and helped finance all the operation, and along with two others that we have captive down in Gitmo, were offered plea deals, and they accepted earlier today. And that was announced just moments ago. So Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the two other terrorists awaiting trial at Guantanamo Bay striking plea deals just moments before the podcast here. Why they were even offered plea deals is beyond me. I'm not entirely sure. I believe they should have stood trial. It's been 23, 24 years since this happened. I'm not entirely sure what's taking so long, but a spokesperson for the Office of Military Commissions, which is prosecuting the case, confirmed that it had entered into pretrial agreements with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the accused principal architect of the al-Qaeda attacks, and two alleged co-conspirators, Walid Mohammed Salih Mubarak bin Atash and Mustafa Ahmed Adam al-Hassawi, all of whom have been held in the U.S. military prison off the coast of Cuba since 2003. Obviously, a tough pill to swallow for any American, even more so the victims' families, who had to wait 24 years just to get to this day when they find there will be no trial. There will be no death sentence, as it feels like there should be. I'm sorry, but I feel like we should have been watching these three men die publicly at one of our July 4th celebrations. I mean, what would have been better than that? Here are the three people that we have captive, responsible for the worst day in American history, and they'll die in front of everybody's eyes, and then some fireworks, and then some hot dogs. I mean, there's nothing more American than that. I mean, I feel like most of us were kind of waiting for that, Watch the dogs die, and then put some dogs on the grill. That would have been the day. And now not so much. Now there's a plea deal, which I don't know. The chief prosecutor for the OMC, Rear Admiral Aaron C. Rugg, R-U-G-H, Rue, I don't know, released a statement earlier today saying, in exchange for removal of the death penalty as a possible punishment, these three accused have agreed to plead guilty to all of the charged offenses, including the murder of 2,976 people listed in the charge sheet. And that's what he had to say. Obviously, the families of the victims upset, disappointed. Daniel Dialra, whose twin brother, John Dialra, I apologize, I'm probably butchering that last name, was one of the 23 NYPD cops killed that day on the attacks. He told the New York Post, "I'm very disappointed. We waited patiently for a long time. I wanted the death penalty. The government has failed us." He's right. Retired police officer Jim Smith, husband of Moira Smith, the only female police officer who died on September 11th, said he felt like he had been kicked in the balls. The prosecution and families have waited 23 years to have our day in court to be put on the record what these animals did to our loved ones. They took that opportunity away from us. They committed the worst crime in the history of our country. They should receive the highest penalty. Retired cop Kathy Vigiano, wife of NYPD Detective Joseph Vigiano, who was killed on 9/11, said, quote, "I am angry and disappointed that the enemy combatants who killed thousands of Americans in our homeland are now able to exploit the U.S. judicial system to their benefit, receiving support from the American taxpayers for shelter, food, and health care for the rest of their lives." The guilty plea hearings to charges including murder and conspiracy could take place as early as next week, with the sentencing hearings expected sometime next summer, according to the letter obtained by the Post. The OMC letter revealed that the terror suspects have also agreed to respond to any questions the family members of victims have regarding their roles and reasons for conducting the September 11 attacks. Family members were told they were allowed to submit questions, which would be funneled to the men through their defense attorneys and answered within 90 days. It was not immediately known where the men will be incarcerated following their pleas. So I understand this ability to have the victims ask questions. I mean, certainly that's a little bit important of allowing for some form of closure, but I can't help but think that the best form of closure would have been watching these three guys swinging from the torch of the Statue of Liberty while fireworks reflect off of their dead bodies in the middle of a July 4th celebration, because that's how I would have done it. I would have said, let's hang them right off the Statue of Liberty, let freedom ring all over their fucking faces, and light some fireworks and have some fucking ribs. Make a celebration out of it. That's what I would have done. I'm not entirely sure how we got here or why we're here. I don't know if there's anything that could be done about it from this point on. I mean, again, I can't speak for all the victims' families. I fortunately did not lose anybody that day. It was a trying day. I was in New York City. I did work at JFK Airport. It did make my life a living hell. From that day on, having to do security at the airport, working with security through the airport there was a miserable time, as it was for every other New Yorker. But even more so miserable for the victims' families. I mean, you think they would have polled the victims' families and asked if something like this was acceptable. I don't know if they thought, well, what were they thinking? That they wouldn't be able to get a conviction? Is there no way they could have gotten a free, a fair trial? Would anybody have minded? Who would have been the person, people, groups that would have filed a lawsuit or, represented them if they didn't get a fair trial? Do you need to send them off to some sort of international court? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with whatever we have to do. But the fact that we're sitting here and these three guys now are going to be living off of the government tit, my hard-earned tax dollars. All right, maybe it's not hard-earned, but my tax dollars, your hard-earned tax dollars, going to feed them every day for the rest of their lives. If they take ill, they'll be given American health care. They'll get to celebrate every single birthday. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, it's Guantanamo Bay. Probably not the greatest place on earth. Terry Strada, national chair of the 9/11 Families United, a community of families of people murdered in the attack, said some of the relatives wanted a plea deal because they wanted it to end after waiting for justice for more than 2 decades. But Strada, whose husband Tom Strada, 41-year-old bond broker at Cantor Fitzgerald, who was killed in the attack, said, quote, "For me personally, I wanted a trial. I wanted them to be found guilty. I wanted them to be punished accordingly." So I can understand some people wanting it to come to an end. I mean, it's been 24 years. Again, I'm not entirely sure why it's taken so long. Feels like we could have locked this thing up pretty quickly. I mean, I hate to say this because I like to think of myself as a pretty mild-mannered, educated person. It's 3 people. If we got it wrong, I would be okay with it. I don't want to see any innocent people die ever. But in this particular instance, I would be okay with it. I'd be okay if we kind of got it wrong. I mean, this was a bad one, right? 9/11 was the worst of the worst. It didn't get any worse than that. Pandemic was terrible. Pandemic was horrible. Different set of circumstances. You know what I mean? Different set of circumstances. Are we worried that one of these guys wasn't involved? I mean, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was pretty much, I mean, come on. Is asking these guys questions, is that going to help? I'm not a family member of a victim. Perhaps wouldn't have been the way I planned it out, though. Again, I would have preferred to watch their lifeless bodies dangle from the Statue of Liberty while the reflection of fireworks, Grucci fireworks, reflect off their faces as I chow down on some American hot dogs. That would have been how I called it. That's what I would have done. That's not me. I don't get to make these decisions. It's a bold move. Supposedly, the OMC was in these plea deal negotiations with the suspect's defense counsel since March of 2022. So even this has been going on for 2 years. If you don't know, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was the one who proposed the idea for the attacks to Osama bin Laden in 1996. The Pakistan-born, accused of playing a key role in the planning, including training some of the hijackers in Pakistan and Afghanistan, was captured in Pakistan in March of 2003, interrogated at secret CIA prisons, including being waterboarded 183 times, which attorneys argue constitutes torture and should render any testimony he gave inadmissible. Bin Attash allegedly provided key training to terrorist hijackers, including lessons on hand-to-hand combat, as well as conducted meticulous research into airline timetables. Al-Hassawi is a citizen of Saudi Arabia charged with helping hijackers with their travel arrangements and finances. He was captured in Pakistan along with Mohammed in March of 2003. As soon as news broke moments ago, the White House issued a statement through the National Security Council officially distancing itself from the agreement. The statement was, and I quote, "The president and White House played no role in this process. The president has directed his team to consult as appropriate with officials and lawyers at the Department of Defense on this matter." President Patrick Hendry, you might fall under questioning there, Hendry, the Police Benevolent Association president, who has been inundated with calls from officers' families upon learning of the plea deal, said he was heartbroken and it's infuriating. Continuing, quote, "Their loved one sacrifices being disrespected and they are being victimized all over again. These individuals masterminded an attack on our nation that not only claimed 2,977 lives that day, but thousands more in the years since." I've said this before, and I mean it. Allowing Osama bin Laden's body to be buried at sea was the last decent thing that we needed to do. Hearing that he was killed, again, I would have hung his fucking body from the Statue of Liberty, his dead, lifeless body. But I understand you don't want to rub that sort of thing in people's faces. When that occurred, the world was in a different place. We were still involved fighting Al-Qaeda. There was still a lot more work to be done. I thought that the way President Obama handled that was probably the most appropriate because you didn't want to strike up any other issues. Fair enough. But that was the last time we needed to be decent. There was no reason for decency in this particular instance. So, again, I'm not entirely sure why or how we got here, but it was a decision by the Office of Military Commissions, who's prosecuting the case, and I think they failed us, made the bad decision, and let all of America down. And that's where we're going to leave it there. President Trump today, this was the big wild story for the better part of the day because he went up at the National Association of Black Journalists, a conference in Chicago, and did about a half hour or so with 3 journalists up on the stage. And boy, were there some fireworks, just to say the least. There was a lot of fireworks, if you will. It was a little crazy. Things got a little nutty. We'll play the clips for you here of President Trump up on the stage. Now, I guess he thought that Kamala Harris was going to be there. She wasn't. There were some technical difficulties and glitches to contend with. The clip we're going to share with you here is from the public, from PBS. And we'll pick it up from President Trump jumping up on stage and settling in with the crew.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe Black district attorneys. You've attacked Black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking Black supporters to vote for you, why should Black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for Black workers and Black entrepreneurs. I've done so much. And, you know, and I say this, historically, Black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke. And I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late, just so we understand. I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe
have
that
answered
Black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another
I
4
have
years.
been the best president for the Black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act.
For you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters,
All right, so
including Republicans on Capitol.
that was the first question. I mean, we're not even 2 minutes into it, and that was the first bit of an exchange there between President Trump and this young lady from the ABC. It's a pretty bold statement to say here the greatest president for African Americans. I mean, as you heard, she brought up what's his name and the voting rights. Anyway, I mean, it goes on from here.
Capitol Hill have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first Black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
Give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say, no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a Black woman.
I
She went to a
respect
historically
either
Black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a Black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
And
you
I
believe
think,
that
I think
she is
somebody should look into that too when you ask a continuing.
It's a pretty bold statement to be like, she was Indian and then she became Black. I don't know if you just become Black. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. I don't know if this was a good look for him today. But to go out with a bold statement where I think he was a bit rattled. I think he was a little annoyed that Kamala wasn't there. I think he should have known this was going to be a tough room to play in. I think he should have been. I would have loved to have seen Unity Trump go into there. I feel like if I was on the prep team, I would have been like, sir, let's try and play that Unity angle. Remember that thing that we said we were going to do a couple of weeks ago after you got shot that lasted all of 4.5 minutes? I think that would play today. I think we're going to try. I think that would be good. to go with, the whole, well, let's be nice and unite everybody. But he did not, he did not, he did not. He did not. He did not go in that direction at all. At all.
In a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans
I really
have
don't
said?
know. I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well,
interview.
you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming to...
Okay, what would have been the harm? And I would love to hear from Trump supporters on this. What would have been the harm if he just said, of course not? Of course, she's not a DEI hire. It's ridiculous to assume that the vice president of the United States is there just because. First of all, she's there because she helped Biden win. He needed the West Coast. He needed somebody young. You forget what it was like back then. They were going up against Trump and Pence. They needed just somebody from a different perspective. I guess you could frame it. Because she's a woman and because she's a minority. I mean, I guess you could frame it that way. But let's be honest. The country was looking for progress at the time. The country was looking for something different from the same old white guys. You know what I mean? You could say she's intelligent. You can say she's a law and order candidate because she was a prosecutor, lawyer, right? I mean, accomplished human being. You can say because she was a public servant. You can say because geographically she's on the West Coast and helps Biden, who's an East Coast older gentleman. I mean, there's a plethora of reasons. What would have been the harm if he said, of course not? She's here because she's a public servant. She's here because she offers something different. She's here because it's a part of the natural progression of a democratic republic that we're in. What would have been the harm? There's no harm in saying that. There's no harm in saying, and by the way, I think I can do a better job. I don't agree with her policies. I think she's approaching things all the wrong way. What is wrong with saying that? The greatest thing that John McCain ever said when things were getting crazy in the 2008 election was, there's nothing wrong with Barack Obama. We just disagree on how to get to where we're going. We both want to see the country prosper. We just disagree on how to get there. John McCain was one of the greatest public servants we've ever had. Period. End of sentence. And that moment in the 2008 election was the last time I saw any bit of decency in a presidential campaign. And it came from Republican John McCain, who at the time, by the way, was getting his clock cleaned because he picked an idiot for a running mate who had no business being there. Right? She cost him that election. That should have been a runaway for John McCain. Went up against Barack Obama with nowhere near the experience. McCain should have ran circles around him, but McCain had two things going against him. Republican fatigue from 8 years of a Bush White House with a war that was completely unnecessary. And he picked an idiot for a running mate. He made one mistake, and there was one hurdle that he just could not overcome. He could not do it. And on top of that, Barack Obama was a very charismatic person, and it was over for him. But on paper, he should have wiped the floor with the inexperienced Barack Obama on paper. And that dude stood in a room with a bunch of people calling Barack Obama a Muslim, stopped everybody and said, he's not, or a terrorist, whatever that lady called him. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact words, but I just will never forget him stopping and saying, there's nothing wrong with him. We just don't agree. We agree on where we want to go. We obviously want the country to prosper. We just don't agree on how to get there. What is wrong with that? Donald Trump makes me scratch my head, as do other candidates, because they constantly play to their base, which tends to be the most fanatical portion of their party, instead of realizing I'm never going to lose them. Let me play to the people in the middle that I need to get. I don't understand why this is so difficult. How can a lowly podcast host put this together, yet all these political science people and advisors can't just go easy? Just easy. We've got the crazy 20%. Let's move towards the 30% of our party that we can't get, or the 30% of the country, 50% of our party that we don't have locked up just yet. Let's lock them in. And then, dare I say, let's go to that extra 10% in the middle that seems to be bouncing back and forth between both parties and see if we can't get them by being decent human beings. This guy especially survives a shooting, comes out of that with the country needs unity now more than ever. And here we are 2 weeks later, and he's doing the same old bullshit. I don't get it.
Today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border.
There's a little bit of a reaction there because he says a lot of the journalists in this room are black. He's at a National Association for Black Journalists conference. I mean, I don't. A lot of the journalists, it's like going to a Yankee game and going, a lot of the people here seem to be Yankee fans. I walked into Yankee Stadium and I thought, wow, look at all these Yankee fans. It's really amazing. Lots of Yankee fans here. Yeah, I'd hope so. That's the point of games and conferences. All people sharing a similar whatever item, topic, connection, gather. It's a lot of black. I noticed when I got to the National Association for Black Journalists conference, it's a lot of black journalists here. I said, wow, look at all these black journalists at the National Association of Black Journalism conference.
Are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
Okay. So he says he's going, obviously, somewhere in his research, somewhere in the research is mention the border. Obviously, he's going to hit Kamala Harris with the border. He has to. It's her biggest weak spot. She was border czar. She never went down, or she went down to a spot that was insignificant and didn't do a great job. Okay, that he doesn't. There's a few things to hit Kamala Harris with. This is going to be his biggest thing. He has to focus on this. It's it's one of her vulnerable spots. Okay. So he's going to hit her with this quite often. Whether you agree with it or not, it's insignificant. Their polling shows it's going to be her weak spot. So he's got to hit her with this. So he's going in there going, okay, I got to hit her with border. So I can say that the border crisis is leading to people coming in illegally, illegal immigrants coming in and taking black jobs. And then he gets hit with, what is a black job? And then his answer is, a black job is any job. It's a recovery. It was an answer. I don't know if it made sense. I mean, you're in there with a journalist. The journalist is going to, I mean, you can't just leave a fastball hanging over the plate like that and not expect them to turn on it and put it over the fence. I mean, they're taking black jobs. What is a black job? Okay. Oh, okay. Let me think about this for a second. What's a good hip hop artists? They're taking, back in my day, we used to, all the hip hop stars were African Americans. Back in my day, we had Dr. Droop, right? Now with Biden, it's all suddenly Eminem is the #1 hip hop artist of all time. When did that happen? Not during my administration. In my administration, it was Travis Scott. Okay. So, they're taking the black jobs. They're taking the hip hop jobs. Rappers. That's what we used to be the good rappers back in the day. NWA. I remember I went to go see the NWA. I thought, oh, there's a lot of attitude in here. These guys are angry. They have attitude. Now all of a sudden under Biden, we've got Slim Shady. You know what I'm saying? More like Slim Paley. Am I right? He's very pale. He's very pale. Back in my day, we had all sorts. We had the Wu-Tang Clan. And now under Biden, all of a sudden, it's Slim Shady and Macklemore. I mean, suddenly white rappers from Seattle. I mean, give me a break. I went into Seattle and I thought, all of a sudden there's white rappers. I said, wow, look at all these white rappers. There's no room for the African American rappers anymore. They're coming in and stealing our jobs. I was talking to Abraham Lincoln, greatest president for the African Americans since me. And we were saying, wow, used to be all hip hop used to be, for the African Americans. And now all of a sudden it's for white guys who don't shower from the Northwest. I mean, Macklemore, they say Seattle. I think he's from Vancouver. I don't even think he's American, to be honest with you. I'd like to see a birth certificate. I'm calling for Macklemore's birth certificate right here in the middle of Chicago. We've got to get Macklemore's birth certificate. I mean, what's next? We're going to give Robin Thicke another hit? Give me a break already. Let's bring back Pharrell. Let's get the African Americans back on the top of the charts, people. Black jobs, hip hop artist. Am I doing okay? Feels like it's not going so well in here. I walked in and I thought, wow, I'm going to say something stupid. And I did. They're taking the black jobs. What's a black job? Oh, no. Oh, it's any job. Any job a black person could get would be the thing. Which is, okay, you're being very rude to me. You're not treating me right. Your Zoom is cutting out. Sir, you're here in person. Okay. If you...
And they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country.
Maybe she did a bad job, though, because an illegal immigrant came in and took that job away from her because she's black. Have we looked into that yet? Because if we're going to follow this logic, you know. Now Christine says Frank's impression is better, and the more you do it, the worse it gets. Yeah, but that's kind of my signature thing. We all know that Frank is the talent on the show, and he does the impressions. Mine, you know, it progressively gets worse. The writing is good, the impression not so much. I appreciate you pointing that out, Christine. Thanks. I used to be good at impressions until illegal immigrants came in and took that job away from me.
And they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs, and frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions. By
the way, the hand thing has really, we've reached an all-time high with the hand thing. It is like the accordion hands are just, it's unbelievable. All the unions, I went to the unions. I said, wow, there's no more unions. It's all illegal immigrants unionizing.
Prisons, from jails, they're gang members in other countries. Other countries are setting loose their prisoners. They're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers.
Again, I don't doubt that we have a border crisis. We have since we had a border. I don't doubt that scary people are coming in. I don't doubt that criminals are coming in. I don't doubt that people with mental issues are coming in. I don't doubt that people from other countries, the Middle East. I don't doubt that, you know, people from parts of the world or people that want to just harm us are coming in through the southern border. I do not doubt it. It is an issue that needs to be fixed. By the way, we did have legislation that looked like it was going to pass until somebody stopped it. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I'm doing the awkward head thing. And that's just facts. I mean, that's just facts. They were going to have a border deal, and Donald Trump stopped it because he would have had nothing to run on. And as an American, it makes me sad. As somebody who understands politics, I'm not surprised. It's often been a problem in our country, but nobody has solved this border crisis since the time of Reagan. It's been going on for the longest time. Both parties have been letting it happen because it keeps the cost it keeps wages down. I mean, we all know this. We're all adults. We can speak frankly here. That's what it is. We've had Republican presidents, we've had Democrat presidents, and we've had border problems because both parties realize what illegal immigration brings to the table. Lower wages. He helps keep the wages down. You could even say the Democrats feel like they have people that'll vote for them, and the Republicans feel like they have something that'll keep wages down. If you want to split it down the middle, I'm okay with that too. But that's the truth. That's the fact of the matter. So this is the only thing he can really hit her with, and he's leaning into it hard. I don't doubt that all these things are happening. Is it getting worse? Okay, I could accept that. Maybe it's worse now than it ever was. I mean, this whole picture of the world's going to end is just so fucking exhausting. Again, if I'm a Republican who is advising him, I would tell him the same thing. Let's back off the rhetoric a little bit. You can't tell people the world is going to end tomorrow for 8 years straight and expect them to keep believing it. I mean, we're watching the Democrats shift in strategy right now as we speak. If we elect Trump, it's going to be the end of democracy. If we elect Trump, it's going to be the end of democracy. They've switched strategies because it doesn't work. They've gone to this whole Republicans are weird thing. Is that working? I don't know, maybe. It's better than the world's going to end if we elect this guy, because you cannot keep telling people the world is going to end when the world never ends. It doesn't work, and it creates fatigue.
Gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way, their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Mr. President, I want to get into how you address some of the issues with Black communities. And I say that plural because we live in communities of color that are different. We're not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same.
True.
It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk about something that bursts, and this is the weight of the inflation on this country right now. The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single Black moms, when you look statistically. Yeah. How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the Black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, you know, this woman was unable to get the right equipment. But it's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear every other word. It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating. And if you just take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young Black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country, and it's destroying the Black community probably as much or more.
So what do you do?
Than any.
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls. And then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, you know, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight. A prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing where you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him. And now we have to steer it to her. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy.
I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. I mean, this whole idea that he's going to complain about who he's facing in the election is a hand to the head moment. Again, if I'm a Trump advisor, I'd be like, don't shut the fuck up. Don't talk. You have to face whoever the Democratic Party nominates. Just because you thought it was going to be Biden and now it's not, you can't complain about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you cannot. Now, let's give him credit. How do you fix inflation? I'm going to bring the cost of energy down. Okay. I'm not saying that's going to work, but it's a thought. It's a plan. I'll give him that. It is a plan. If you bring down the cost of energy, it will have an impact on inflation. Whether it will solve it or not, I mean, there's a lot that goes into inflation in the economy. Housing costs, yes. Fuel, yes. Energy costs, housing costs, rates, right? Lending rates. There's a lot that goes into it. So he did name one thing that is part of that whole process. So give him credit for that. But then he pivots to, it's not fair. I was going against one guy. And then he took it easy on Biden too. He takes it easy on Biden. They say he had a bit. Like, no, it was a fucking horrendous debate. They say, you know who they are? The Democrats. Their own fucking party hung this guy out to dry. You can say that. Why wouldn't you capitalize on that? So he goes from complaining about they swapped out the people to then saying it doesn't matter because it's the same policies. Well, which one is it? What are you exactly complaining about? I'm not entirely sure. I think he was so flustered because he was getting a bad reaction from the room with the first exchange he had with the reporter in the blue to the black. They're taking the black jobs. What are black jobs? And he goes, well, I think he realized, oh, I fucked some things up here. And I think he was just a bit off his game because you can't complain out of both sides of your mouth about one thing. It seems crazy. By the way, I know we're on this topic for quite a while. There's just so much here. And granted, and I love Frank, this would have taken 7 more hours if Frank were here. Frank, we would be going, I mean, I don't even know, we'd be 3 minutes in if Frank was here. So, we're making some progress, even though it's a long time.
Policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely.
I did like that move. Did you see for the people watching? Somebody goes, Mr. President. He goes, they're getting with it. And then as soon as she said something, he pointed. He was just like, we have to go back. That was a wonderful, that was a Trump moment that we got to replay.
His fighters in a fight. He's not doing where you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him. And now we have to steer it to her. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker,
Mr. President, nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. Point and keep going, big John. Point and keep going.
Within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr. President, can I ask you another question
Yes,
that is also impacting Black Americans?
and that's very clear now. Good.
I'm sorry?
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, someone from Illinois, an unarmed Black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You've said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water, right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either.
Okay.
But again,
they're going to be charging the officer? I guess they're charging the officer.
So why should he receive immunity?
Well, he might not. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens. I'm talking about people that are much different cases than that. We need people to protect ourselves. And by the way, in Chicago, as an example, a few weeks ago, July 4th weekend, they had 117 shootings and 17 deaths. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
So can you get a little more specific back to the immunity question? Who would make those
Well, right now, for the most part, people are protected by their unions, by their police unions, or by their police departments. But I'm saying if I felt, or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime, or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake. But if somebody made an innocent mistake, I would want to help that person.
What would those exceptions be? What would determine
You
an
go
innocent
after
mistake?
somebody and it's a very close call and it's very dangerous. And they have the policeman's life and woman is a very difficult thing because sometimes you have less than a second to make a life and death decision. And sometimes very bad decisions are made. They're not made from an evil standpoint, but they're made from the standpoint of they made a mistake.
So I want to follow up really quickly. I find it interesting because you do talk about reining in prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you. Why doesn't that skepticism apply to law enforcement?
Well, I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system. I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case in Florida. Everyone said that was the biggest case.
I think it's like, look, I've said this before. Do police officers make mistakes? Yes. They're given a tough job to make a split-second decision, and sometimes they don't get that right. This particular case that they're talking about was this mentally unstable woman called the cops. She thought somebody was after her. Cops show up in the house. She's got a boiling pot of water, and it appears that she's about to throw it in the face of the police officers, and one of the police officers shoots her, kills her. It's not a good look. And he says after the shooting, I wasn't going to take a boiling pot of water to the face. Police are extraordinary people. They're for the most part, and I know a lot of them, wonderful human beings. Some of them are not. Listen, any walk of life, you pick the profession, you pick the person, you're going to have bad apples, right? But for the most part, they're going out there risking their lives on a daily basis to make all of us safe. I will always respect that. Always. When you take a position to be a better person like that, you are going to have to take a boiling pot of water to the face some days. Would I do it? No. But I'm a wuss. I mean, I'm not as good as a cop. I'm not as good as mediocre cops, right? That guy, there was no reason to do that. There was no immediate threat. There was no gun. There was no knife. He could have backed up just as easily. It wouldn't have been as bad. That was a bad thing. By the way, that's also why you don't put out blanket statements, like all cops should have immunity. It's a stupid thing to say to begin with. Her line of questioning was great. It would have been even better if she wrapped it up by saying, hey, isn't it stupid to put out blanket statements like all cops should have immunity? Should all cops be respected? Yes. Is there a lack of respect for police officers in this country? I believe so. It's my feeling on it. Does the lack of respect for police officers lead to bad situations sometimes by suspects or whatever you want to call them that sometimes leads to their death? Yeah, it does. Sometimes it's the person who gets killed by a cop who didn't, if they would have just respected the police officer and stopped, not ran, not reached for something, not charged at them, not go to grab that pot of boiling water. Yeah, they would have, if they had more respect, they would probably be alive. But at the end of the day, like I just said, in this particular case, this woman was mentally disturbed. And that's why police officers are better human beings, because they get into this profession knowing that they have to deal with these things, and they put themselves at risk to make us all safer. And also, they put themselves at risk for people that aren't as mentally there as the rest of us. But her question should have been, you want to take that blanket statement back because blanket statements are stupid? Sometimes I feel like former President Trump is running for 8th grade class president. And he's just out there spoon feeding his constituents on, wouldn't it be great if we got free pizza on Friday? And who's not going to cheer for that? Sometimes I would love there to be a little bit more thought from him. I think there's a difference between police should get immunity and being a police officer is a tough thing. We should respect them. And when they do screw up, we'll hold them accountable. But for the most part, you know, if you listen to a police officer, if you try and de-escalate as police officers try to de-escalate situations, everybody will get to go home at the end of the day, which is the most important thing when a situation escalates to the point where police have to get involved in the first place. What's wrong with common sense? Where'd that go? Where'd that go?
That was the most difficult case, and I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time, and he had 50 years worth of documents, and they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We covered you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to
I
different
didn't notice
topics
you
now.
do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest.
He goes George Schlopadopoulos. Now, I go George Snuffleupagus, but I'm a podcaster. I'm not running for president of the United States of America. ABC didn't cover it. You know what ABC stands for? All bullshit channel. Am I right, people? I mean, I turn on ABC and I say, wow, this is all bullshit channel. Frank can do that impression as good as me, can.
This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one
tell him I said that.
where
Sir,
I
if
have
you
a
don't mind, I'd
hostile
love
judge.
to. We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different
No,
topics.
excuse
if
you.
we
You're the
can.
one that held me up at 35 minutes, just so you understand.
If we can move on now to the state of the race, sir, I want to get back to the campaign.
Thing that made him great in the beginning was his New Yorker, I'm not going to take any shit attitude. It was what was so refreshing about Donald Trump in the beginning. I think it's still what makes Donald Trump supporters love him. But at the same time, you're in a room at the National Association of Black Journalists conference. The room is filled with black journalists, and you're giving shit to a black journalist, and you hear those gasps in the room. Of course that's not going to go over well. Of course it's not going to go over well. I know she hit you with a tough question up at the start, but you're running for president of the United States. You got to be able to handle that. Here we are 20 minutes still into this interview, and he's still giving her shit for them being late. Now, do you think it was her fault the fucking equipment didn't work? Or do you think it was some fucking, union employee who's doing sound, so fucking something up? That's what it was. It's not going to play well in the room. I don't know why he keeps going to it. It seems crazy to me.
Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said.
This was great. This was great. I would love to know how Donald Trump really feels about J.D. Vance. Because on paper, it doesn't seem like a good fit. On paper, it seems like the thing that Trump loves the most was J.D. Vance hated me, and now he loves me. And outside of that, I'm not entirely sure where the connection is, other than Donald Jr. loves the guy. Other than he's young and he could take the mantle of the Trump Republican Party moving forward. I'm not entirely sure he's too pleased with JD and what he has done in the first 2 weeks or so since being named his running mate. By the way, and this isn't Trump's fault, the world changed for him when Biden stepped aside, because we talked about this on the show. Other people have discussed this as well. It's no secret. The running mate was insignificant to Trump. They were there for him. It didn't really matter who he picked when he picked JD Vance. But that all changed when Biden dropped out of the race. Now suddenly it matters. Now all of a sudden the cat lady commentary and the fact that he fucked the couch, it matters with Harris running. And when she picks a running mate, that's going to change the dynamic of the race again for them. I know they say VPs don't matter. They're voting for the president. That's true, but not 100%. Again, it cost McCain the election. Now, it wasn't the whole thing. Again, there was Republican fatigue from a war that we had no business being in from the Bush administration. So that was a big hurdle to get across. But what's her name? I almost called her Pelosi. What's her name? The governor, the Alaskan governor there, cost McCain. It hurt. It hurt there, you know? So I would love to really know how Donald Trump feels about JD Vance, because I feel in my gut he's not Palin. Thank you, Lindarella. Sarah Palin. I feel like in Biden moment, I feel like in his the governor of Arkansas, Russia. I can see Russia from Alaska, Arkansas. Thank you, Sarah. Everybody's writing. Yes, there's a lot of Palins coming in now. Oh boy, do I feel like Joe Biden at this moment. Dear Lord. Dear Lord. Once I hit 42, that was it. I lost it. Palin cost McCain. I would love to know how he really feels about Vance, because it doesn't seem like it's working. I think his son loved him. I think the people around him loved him. But the cat lady commentary, all that. Oh, by the way, the fucking of the couch. People called me out on that. They said that wasn't really in the book. If you go back to the first edition of Hillbilly Elegy, it's in there. It is not in the second edition. So they pulled it out. And when everybody was reporting on it, they were like, look, it's not in there. But if you go back to the first edition of Hillbilly Elegy, the story of him fucking the couch is in there. We researched it. We found it. It's there. I'll find it and put it on screen for you, but it is there. Free ice cream for you, man. Yeah, we're here. You know, anyway, they're trying to take Medicare. It's my Biden impression. I know Frank could do a better one. I get it. All right, back to this.
In the past, he said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless.
Well, anyway, I brought that up because listen to his answer, and I would love to know. Put it in the comments. Put it in the live chat. How Trump answers this question about JD Vance. You tell me how he really feels about him.
Ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate? And do you agree with him?
No, I know this. He is very family oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families. And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here. He also says that people that don't have children should get less votes than those that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your campaign
I think
position?
I'm speaking for him too. He strongly believes in family.
You see that moment there where he goes, I'm speaking for myself. And I think I'm speaking for him too. That to me says there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect between the two. Because JD has gone so far to the right. He's much more to the right than Trump is. You know, I mean, much more to the right. And this whole family thing. See, Trump can't speak to this because he's 3 wives in. He's a known adulterer, right? He wants the Christians and the evangelicals to vote for him. They don't love him. They love J.D. Vance. He's gotten the Republican Party to accept, to acknowledge the fact that if you want to win an election, you have to let abortions happen, right? He's a left-leaning guy. He was a Democrat before he ran as a Republican. He still has Democratic values as a part of him. Most New Yorkers, people from New York City, are and do feel that way. So there's a disconnect here between the two of them. And again, if I'm on the Harris team now, that you need to exploit as much as possible. The same way he's going to go after her for the border. It's one of her vulnerabilities. The vulnerability between Trump and Vance is something that needs to be exploited as well.
But I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet.
He's talked in so many circles. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Nobody does. There's good families. There's bad families. If you have a good family, you don't have a bad family. There's people with no families who are better off than with people with good families and not good families. That's what people tell me with families and not families. Families.
It would have been good. That's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family oriented, but that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just one last point and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator J.D. Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children. I just want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but it's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now, you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time, that have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happen. If I am, you're not going to have any problem. But you're going to see it happening a long time. You're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs, the people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that.
So he pivots to something he's more comfortable with, hitting her with the border thing, which, again, understandable. That's politics. That's running for a campaign. But he can't answer the question, you know. And I mean, even credit Rhoda for being nice here and saying, where was it now? Rhonda, excuse me. I'm sorry. Rhoda did comment, but Rhonda, I wish JD never said that. I think Trump wishes JD never said that. I think that was a big misstep from JD. Because that's exactly what he was saying. He was saying this country is built on, you know, the bedrock of families, and families should get more. Not that families should get more, but he's basically saying we're being run by people who don't have children, and it's costing us. Not exactly the thing to say. Listen, there's no question that families get some priority in this country, right? There is a thing called the child tax credit, right? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with it. By the way, that's how you advance the species. I know we're Republicans and Democrats and independents, and I know we're Americans and all that wonderful thing. So at the end of the day, we are a species. We do need to procreate to keep the whole thing going, right? So to get a little bit of help for that, we've all agreed that there's nothing wrong with that, right? People who don't have children move into an area, they still have to pay taxes. Where do those taxes go? Well, they go to a lot of things, but they also go to schools. So you have a lot of people who don't have children who are paying into a system to take care of the children. Is that fair? That you're paying for something that you'll never, ever use? On the surface, it seems like no, but at the same time, you need the children of this country to be smart and intelligent, because a lot of the things that we forget most of the time is that, yes, we're Republicans and Democrats fighting with one another, but We're also Americans who have to compete against China and England and, Canada and India and Italy, right? I mean, we're competing against the world. So I think people are comfortable with the fact that, yeah, even though my tax dollars are going towards the school that I don't use because I don't have children, it's advantageous for all of us that the children of this country have a good education system, right? We've all sort of agreed. So families do get a bit of a pass. They get a little bit of help. People who don't use the public school system have to still pay into it. We have the child tax credit, so on and so forth. You get a little break for raising children. Those of us who are raising children know, Lord, we need a fucking break, right? You need a fucking break sometimes. You just do. You need a little bit of help in the situation. You're paying more for things. You're paying to just keep the species moving along. You're paying for the children of this country to hopefully be better than the children of other countries, be smart and intelligent and, all that kind of jazz. That's infrastructure. That's what it all is. He could have went to that sort of a thing, but he didn't. JD Vance could have said it a lot better, but he didn't. By the way, where he fucked up is not how he said it or saying it better, is that he said it at all. Because just because you don't have a biological child doesn't mean that you are at any sort of a disadvantage. That's where he fucked up. Kamala Harris does not have any biological children. She's a stepmom. Pete Buttigieg does, he didn't give birth to his children. He adopted them. You know what I mean? So, he fucked that up. Like Reverend Rhonda said, he made that was a whoopsie daisy there. That was a mess up. He screwed that part up.
Vice President question, candidate question was right in there with that. So let's talk about JD Vance for a little bit. He's had some stumbles out of the gate. I don't know if you're hearing what we hear as reporters, but it's been a tough couple of weeks for him. Why did you choose JD Vance?
Why
did you choose him? And I'm having a hard time hearing too. I know everybody out there can, but it's hard to hear.
I'll tell you why. I chose him because he's a very strong believer in work and the working man and woman, and especially the working man and woman who have been treated very unfairly, because you have many of them in this room, but you have many of those people, they were treated very unfairly. They worked very hard and they were treated unfairly. He wrote the book that became a bestseller. The movie became a smash hit. He's a very smart guy without the benefit of having a family that has contacts, like a father that was well connected. He got into Yale Law School. He graduated in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude. You take a look at, his career has been an amazing career. He started off at a level with a difficult family situation, very difficult with the mother and the father and everything else. He ends up going to Yale Law School and was one of the top students, became the head of the law journal. That's an amazing thing. He's a 4-year, he was in the military with great distinction for 4 years, got out, went into business, became successful in business, very successful in business, actually. Did public offerings and other things. And I have to believe in that. He's somebody that was born in a rough situation. Most of the people know that situation because it was very well documented in his book. And I have a lot of respect for somebody that can get into Yale and become one of the best students in Yale, that meets a young woman at Yale who was also outstanding, and they get married, they have a beautiful family. But he had he's made himself an amazing life. He then goes to Ohio, lives in Ohio, and he had my endorsement. That helped. But he wins the Senate. He becomes a United States Senator. So he's a United States Senator. So Harris, like I respect you for your success.
Actually, I think it's his best answer in the whole thing. JD Vance, despite fucking a couch, is an intelligent human being. Doesn't mean you're going to make a good vice president or president. A lot of smart people can't pull it off. Ben Carson was a genius, is a genius. He couldn't fucking run worth a damn. Donald Trump, his level of intelligence is he's a very street smart kind of a guy. I wouldn't say the most intelligent human being as far as book smarts goes. and he was able to become president. So one thing doesn't really necessarily lend itself into the other, but he did go from a shit situation to become a member of the Senate. Graduated Ohio State, Yale, all that stuff. That's all true. The guy is an accomplished guy. You cannot take that away from J.D. Vance. He is an accomplished guy. He's had a rough couple of weeks. He's regretting that chapter on fucking a couch, I'm sure. But he is an accomplished human being. You can't take that away from him.
I respect people
Well,
for
thank
their
you.
success.
The reason I asked the question is because the last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
And
I'm
2 days
sorry.
after
I
that,
cannot understand your microphone.
I know
is so
it is
muffled.
really hard for me
I
to
mean, it's
understand
just,
you too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's
Whoa.
closer.
I can understand you.
Happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
Really happy to hear
understand,
that.
Harris,
I have a few more questions.
because of the distance and the
Again, he goes back to trashing this girl in the blue suit, which goes over a bit better for him this time around, but that's a risk I would not
mics
take.
are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
Are
So,
you asking a question?
what you're saying. Go
so
ahead.
what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring, you choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris, and that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at J.D. Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president in terms of the election does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think JD is. I think that all of them would have been, but you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in.
JD Vance?
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance
Sure.
question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, well, I mean, my
but
point
at
is
least
here.
it was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying?
I don't think, look, I think that the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the
But
death.
I think it's
They're
about
allowing
freedom,
the death
right?
of a baby after the baby is born, based on
Sir,
the
that is
governor of
illegal in
Virginia.
every state in the
That's
country.
Based on the governor of Virginia,
Executing a
they're
baby in
allowing the
every
death
state
of
in
the
the
baby.
I wish he would stop making this point too, because again, this was one person who said something really stupid one time, who does not represent the overwhelming feeling of the Democratic Party as well as the people of the United States of America. Christella brings up a good point about J.D. Vance here. His hatred of women stems from the mistreatment by his mother. He was, he was really mistreated by his mom. If you go back and you read Hillbilly Elegy or see the movie, and Glenn Close, I think, plays his mom, who was, a lot of people tell me she did a good job. They say that she was really good in that movie. The movie wasn't really received all that well, from what I understand. It didn't get high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that that's the end all be all. Maybe you did like it, but that might be part of his little issue about families and women and all that kind of stuff.
country
baby
is illegal.
after it's born.
It's a
They're
crime.
allowing abortions in the 8th and 9th month.
Well,
of
Democrats
pregnancy.
have denied.
I think they're right. And I
That's the
think the
thing.
Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps. But the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it.
Give him credit for that. He has awoken some of the Republicans to the fact that you cannot win an election. Yes, you'll get Catholic votes, Christian votes, evangelical. You'll get all of that, but you cannot win an election without allowing exceptions. And he brings up Ronald Reagan here, and rightfully so. This is a good move for Trump.
Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservative, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it.
That part's not true,
Everybody
But the
wanted
majority
it
of
back.
Americans oppose
Excuse
Roe
me.
v. Wade being
They
overturned.
don't
Multiple
know
polls have showed
about
that,
this.
sir.
Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Ronald Reagan believed with rape, incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing, out of the federal government, it's in states, and people are voting. And I will say, Ohio is, let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing, a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But the people are now voting. And
So, I mean, he admits there, Ohio, Kansas, that people don't want to be told about this. For a woman to do with her body what she wishes is a basic human right. And because your religious beliefs conflict with that, nobody feels like you should have the right to say or choose over everybody else because your religion. So we're seeing that backfire in some of those states that he just mentioned. Credit him for even bringing that up. But nobody wanted that overturned. This is something that's going to cost him the election if it remains a big hot button issue. It's even more of an issue now with Harris than it was with Biden, because she has awoken the women of this country so far. And she's going to put this first and foremost. Again, just the way she's going to get hit with the border stuff, she can swing away at this one. It's a 3-0 count to Vice President Harris in the batter's box on this one. Swing away, because this is going to be big for her in trying to move votes in her direction. It was a big issue before with Biden. It's even bigger now. Why? She's a woman. I don't know. You wouldn't think it would make too much of a difference because it's the same issue no matter what, but it just feels bigger. No? Am I wrong? You can tell me if you think I'm wrong. That's the point of the podcast. But I think it's a bigger issue now. And I wish, because again, I saw this start to die down and I thought he was done with this. And now he's bringing it back again.
And it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our country apart, and it's giving it to the people to vote on.
Because again, there are certain inalienable rights. Term might sound familiar to you. Right to vote, taxation without representation. Like go down the list. You should be able to do with your body what you please, what you feel like you need to do. Just because you live in a certain area of this country doesn't mean it could be different. You have the right to bear arms in this country, flat out, across the board. Is it harder to get a gun in New York City than it is in Wyoming? Absolutely. Are those kinds of things okay? Yes. Why? What's the difference, Ant? Because you could still get a gun in New York City. Is it more difficult? Is it harder? It is. But you can still get it. Do you have to jump through more hoops? Yes. You can still get it. You cannot be told you cannot have one unless you committed a crime, which everybody agrees with. But the right to vote, like you go down, up and down the amendments, this is one that clearly needs an amendment. And I believe it will get an amendment. And I believe that it would help the Democrats win not only the presidency, but down ticket as well if they run on this issue.
And they're voting. And many states have already voted. Others are in the process of voting. And it's bringing it back to the people and a vote of the people. And it's not
This act of it's vote, they're voting, it's a vote of the people, is a loser, because as you're seeing in the two states he just mentioned, they're allowing it.
at all radical. And again, you have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the three exceptions. Most people believe in the three exceptions. Most Republicans believe in the exceptions. But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody.
But the problem is his vice president doesn't believe in the exceptions. Again, a disconnect between the two.
Agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of Virginia, the former governor, I might add, who said, we set the baby aside and then we decide what to do. Meaning, what do? We execute the baby. That's a radical, horrible position. And some people want that. I don't want it. Most people don't.
Thank you. Can I just pivot really quickly to another question about, you brought up health, Harris. You're an active man. We see you golfing all the time.
I'm gonna leave it there because she says, she asked me, you're 80, you're gonna be 82. Would you take a test, coherency test, whatever the hell it is? And he says yes. That's the majority of that. What happened there at the NABJ? I said BJ. Not a banner day for President Trump. I think if you're the Harris campaign, you look at this and you go, here's clearly where we need to hit. The difference between him and J.D. Vance, Project 2025, abortion. I mean, there's a lot. He's left himself open to a lot of things. He is going to campaign on the border crisis. He's going to campaign on energy and economics and inflation. That's where the Democrats are open to. I know the Democrats are going to say inflation is a global thing and not a national thing. You're not wrong. He's going to campaign on it. That's what he has to do. Those are the only openings he has. Those are the openings that she has. We hash it all out and we see who comes out on top. Last topic of the podcast here. Fox News is slaying. Fox News is murdering. Absolutely murdering in the ratings wars amongst cable news networks. By the way, I feel like, and nobody is doing this, and I'm not bragging for this podcast because certainly we acknowledge that we're in the middle of the road. We're not the most popular, and we have a great big following. We're not without listeners, followers, members, audience. We appreciate you wholeheartedly. We try and shout you guys out whenever. You guys know who you are. You're so important to us. We're right in that middle of the road for podcasts. We do well. There's a lot that does a lot better, but I would love to put ratings, if you will, numbers, downloads, influence, when it comes down to it, of podcasts versus cable news. Because I feel like podcasts are killing cable news altogether, and nobody's really talking about that. Most notably because cable news doesn't want to talk about it. And if podcasts talk about it, it's self-grandizing. But I do believe that podcasts, Joe Rogan, Pod Save America, Ben Shapiro, all sides of the aisle, you name it, it's the dominant medium today. But if we're looking at old school cable news, Fox is destroying everybody. And King of the Hill right now, as Tucker Carlson once was, as Sean Hannity once was, it is now Jesse Waters, prime time, which is amazing because he can be funny at times, but overall, I feel like Jesse Waters is just a gigantic douchebag in a suit, as most cable news hosts are. But he is killing in the ratings. He's got the 8 p.m. slot, which it used to be, Tucker was on at 9. 9 used to be the big thing, or 10 used to be the big thing. Then it slid to 9, and now it seems to be 8. It's probably because the audience of cable news is getting older and they fall asleep by the time 8:45 rolls around. But the Jesse Waters prime time 8 p.m. slot brought in 4.4 million viewers, nearly 600,000 viewers in the key demographic there, which is, what are they saying this now? 18 to 35, I would say, is the key demo. So 600,000 viewers in the demo, 4.4 million viewers. The 5, which is also a show that Jesse Waters is on, that's their afternoon show there, That's averaging 3.9 million viewers, 400,000 viewers in the key demo. Well, they're going 25 to 54. It depends on what your demo is, 18 to 35. They're saying 25 to 54. Okay, fine. 400,000 viewers there. Overall, in prime time, Fox blew away its rivals, averaging around 3.5 million viewers prime time. I'm assuming they're going 8 to 11. Maybe it's 7 to 11. Maybe it's 7 to 10. I don't know. Because 10 o'clock is that weird spot where 11 is late night, 8 to 10 prime time, whatever they're considering it. Fox is pulling in an average of 3.5 million viewers, 500,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. MSNBC is the next closest at 1.2 million viewers, 82,000 in the prime demo. Those numbers are abysmal. You're talking about this podcast doing better than MSNBC. Joe Rogan is averaging, he's in the tens of millions per episode. He is blowing cable news out of the water. Out of the water. It's not even close. You talk about the influence of cable news. In the demo, MSNBC can only muster up 82,000 viewers. And that's the left's power. 3.5 million for Fox, 1.2 million for MSNBC overall in prime time. That's scary. Those are dwindling numbers. And where's CNN? Why haven't you mentioned CNN? They're doing even worse. Their primetime lineup, Anderson Cooper, Caitlin Collins, only amassing 856,000 viewers. So you have 3.5 million for Fox, 1.2 million for MSNBC. They haven't even pulled off 1 million yet on CNN. Where are they in the key demo? They're a little over 200,000. So you can see they're a little bit more respected in the key demo than MSNBC is, but still not great. Daytime programming, Fox averages about 1.9 million viewers for the past month. More than 260,000 of those in the coveted advertiser demo of 25 to 54. MSNBC only pulling in 721,000. CNN 523,000. So Fox News continues to be the big cat on the street, and they are pulling away from the left-leaning media. That is where you've seen Donald Trump's impact. If he's done anything, he has destroyed the liberal cable news media. The cable news going down to begin with, but Donald Trump has certainly helped put them into the ground. So congratulations to the folks over at Fox News for killing it. Their audience, I think, is cable news in general is dwindling, but they seem to be pulling in more and more people in their direction. And again, I think it's because if we've learned anything from the Harris campaign, you cannot predict the end of the world every day. It is going to get exhausting. It's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And I think that's what we're seeing with these cable news networks. If you're wondering where Chris Cuomo is and News Now and all those things, forget it. This show's got more viewers than those networks altogether. And we're very proud of that. And we thank you guys for tuning in across all the platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, even though we've been flagged on Twitter, even though we hit millions of views on TikTok, and then we only get 34 views on Facebook for pieces of content. Even with all the shitty algorithm treatment, we are still doing fairly well. And that's because you guys hit that like button. It's because you guys share the episodes. It's because you guys subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Facebook, wherever you get Apple Podcasts, everywhere. And we appreciate that wholeheartedly. We appreciate the most our members who fork over their hard-earned cash every single month to help support the show and what we're trying to do here, which is just have some fun, entertain, and inform. Keep that up. Join the members area. If you haven't already, you could do so for as low as $2.99. Click the link in the description. It helps. If you enjoy the discourse, the conversation, the back and forth, become a member. It helps us out greatly. We'll catch you guys on Friday. We're playing a game with Frankie C.
Show me potato salad.
And Aaron C. And Jay Saps. See ya.
Maybe we should go now.
Khalid,